Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Slappin Kpop podcast. I'm Maria, and I'm here with Kayla,
Hello.
and we are going to discuss about one of the best TV shows ever, Avatar: The Last Airbender, mainly
Yes.
in celebration of it finally being available on Netflix for the North American market, I think,
Mhm.
which is exciting.
It's so exciting.
Yay!
It's like all we've been doing is rewatching the show.
Oh yeah, it's been a time. I just finished the whole series like today, so
mhm. Yes, and we're just so excited about it. And we had talked about recording a podcast on this for a really long time. And since it came out on Netflix, we're like, this is just perfect timing. We have to do the podcast now.
yes. And so it's totally connected to K-pop because
Totally connected to K-pop.
K-pop is from Korea. Guess what? This show was mostly overwhelmingly animated in Korea, which is awesome. So shout
Mhm.
out to all those awesome Korean animators who worked hard to create and help like create the visual imagery of such an amazing TV show. So
Mhm.
shout out to them.
Yes.
All right. So I guess we will start off with kind of our personal history of the show.
Mhm.
So for me, when I was a kid, I watched it I think straight from the beginning or close to it. And I always paid attention to when episodes were on. And yeah, I remember when I was 12 like moving from television to television because of whatever my parents were using the TV, they're like, Maria, I want to watch my show. So I'm like moving from the living room television to the television in the kitchen to like the one that's in the basement, just trying to watch the whole of Zozin's Comet, all four
mhm.
parts. And yeah, I just remember being very excited and my parents just being very confused why I'm freaking out. But yeah, no, this show had such a huge impact on me, just not just as a kid but just in general. Like it tied into, like, say, my interest into, like, you could say, like, the pre-interest into like Asian media, or like media that had a clear influence from like Asian cultures and whatnot.
right,
And
right.
this was just like one of those things that just happened before I got into K-pop. And it left a big impact on me. It really was a show that showed for me how to make a well-crafted story and like how to end a show. Because I feel like not too many shows have good endings. I mean, Lost's ending, I remember from when I watched that, was kind of could have been
Oh
better.
God, yeah.
And then I don't watch Game of Thrones,
That's
but
like maybe the
I
biggest disappointment of a finale final season ever.
oh yeah, I've heard a lot about that finale season. So it just makes me even more grateful that the creators, even though it was really popular, they stopped when they stopped,
Oh yeah.
and it just worked. It helped complete the story. They were done with that story.
Right.
Even though they did continue in the comics still, they're still making comics for these characters after the war and kind of the issues you would expect to see kind of from modern times, like with globalization and like, colonial territories and dealing with all that kind of stuff. And it, it's still, I would recommend checking out those comics, but like that initial story, it just left such an impact on me, especially with the topics it handled. Um, which we could probably get into a little bit later, but it
Mhm.
was stuff that you couldn't really see from any other kids show really at the time. And I feel like I'm starting to see it more in recent years, especially with streaming becoming really popular, because I think they're more willing to like play with that stuff a little bit,
Yeah.
personally. But I think a show like Avatar was like a huge influence for trying to touch up on those things,
Mhm.
like with genocide and with like totalitarianism and like that sort of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of like the entire series as a whole has this like overarching like war themes to it, which is not something you see very often in shows, like especially kids shows. Like that's usually just way too serious of a topic that people want to cover in something that they're making for children. And so when I was watching this show, I didn't watch it nearly as regularly as a child because I would just sort of see episodes on TV if they were there, and I just kind of watched it really casually. I wasn't following the new episodes nearly as much as Maria was, but I did then binge watch the entire thing while I was in high school, because I had a lot of friends who were really into it and recommended that I watch the whole series, and so I watched the whole thing in high school over like a Christmas break one year, and it was fantastic. And honestly, I feel like watching it at an older age like was really cool because I did appreciate a lot of the darker themes that were happening in the show. And so I still really enjoyed it at like an older age. I mean, I still enjoy the show now, so I think it's really a testament to how well the show holds up, how it's so much more than just like a children's show. It really can pull in like all different age groups for it.
I mean, it also went to #1 on Netflix for
Yeah.
like their top 10.
Mm-hmm.
If that and that this is after 15 years it aired.
Because everyone who watched it as a
impressive.
kid like absolutely loves it. I don't know of anyone who is a fan, like who has watched this show and absolutely hated it. Like I just don't know anyone like that.
Or there might have been people who were more indifferent to it, but I never heard really negative comments about this show if they did watch it. You
Right.
know? But yeah, speaking of the show, do we want to talk about our nice little
Yes,
tier list?
because the two of us have gone through the painstaking process of making a tier list for every single episode in the series.
So I guess we'll mainly talk about my absolute GOAT tier episodes, and then talk about my worst by default episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe get into a couple other like notable scenes from some episodes in between that realm.
Yeah.
So, absolute all-time favorite episode for sure, hands down, is Sozin's Comet Part 4. Because, again, this show basically taught me how to make a great ending. And this episode was just completely worth it to me. It was completely worth it to sit through the other prior 60 episodes of this show and like watch them all. And it's just such a satisfying ending for I think pretty much all of our main characters.
Oh yeah.
For Zuko's character growth, the fate of Azula, Ain's character growth into becoming a fully realized avatar, him winning a fight by not going against his morals with, energy bending, and just the relationships that are formed at the end, and yeah, everyone kind of that deserves a nice, happy ending got that, really, for this story. And it's just completely satisfying to me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I have all of Sozin's comments, parts 1 through 4, in my like GOAT tier episodes. It's just such a good finale, and I really like how it's 4 parts because they really give it enough time to develop like the ending story in general, and like the last episode is just absolutely fantastic. It's so
yeah.
good.
The 4. Oh, same with me too. The 4 parts are all my GOAT tier, just in different sections. Yeah, part 3 is actually my second favorite, especially for not just the beginning of Sozin's and Ain's fight and how that starts, but also for the Agni Kai between Zuko and Azula. The music,
so good.
The music in that fight scene is so good.
It's so good. Everything
so
about
good.
that is so good.
And it's like funny because it's literally watching to, the forces of good and evil in the form of siblings literally clash with each other, like watching two dragons literally fighting each other, which is funny because it's the royal family and whatnot. But it was such like a great character arc for both of them, and then also watching Azula just into madness, especially with that scene when she's in front of the mirror
Oh,
trying to fix
yeah.
up her hair, but
Mm-hmm.
she's also in like a messed up state because of what happened with the betrayal in her eyes of May and Ty Lee back in the Day of Black
Yeah,
Sun
yeah.
Part 2, and
Oh, that's
it's
Boiling
it's
Rock Part
crazy.
2.
Oh, sorry, the Boiling Rock Part 2. Goodness, still a great episode. But yeah, it was such a great lead up, and I just absolutely love the parts of featuring mainly Zuko and Azula in that episode. It
Yeah,
was just
it's so
great.
good.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then third favorite, Southern Raiders.
Yeah,
Lord,
that's also in my
oh,
top tier.
oh yeah, it's just again, this was such a perfect way to end Katara's big overall story arc, because when you watch the series, you know, a lot of what motivates her is defined by what happened to her mom. And so this episode kind of gives her the closure of like that, and her kind of coming to terms about learning about forgiveness, and also just knowing kind of like when not to full on act on revenge, really, at
Yeah.
least towards more of the end of the episode. um and Zuko in a way did help with that, mainly by helping feed into her, I think, more rage side, but that was balanced out with kind of Ain's I guess you could say suggestions in the beginning of the episode, or guidance, but which I think eventually came to the to the forefront at the end of the episode, instead of like really harming, you know, the man who she found that killed her mom. You know, she does show some mercy, even though we know she's not going to forgive him, which is fair.
Right. I mean, yeah.
But she does end up forgiving Zuko, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
And that's also a really good episode to sort of put a lot of closure on their relationship too, because a lot of, I think, the hatred she has from Zuko also stems from the loss of her mother and the Fire Nation, and Zuko just even being like associated with the Fire Nation in general. So I think that's also a really good part of that episode.
Oh yeah, being a part of the family whose direct ancestors caused this whole war in the first place. So, you know, her coming to terms that, you know, there can be good people within the Fire Nation too as well. Favorite episode of season 2, The Crossroads of Destiny.
I have that as
What a
my top
cliffhanger.
favorite episode. It's so
What
good.
a cliffhanger, girl. You did not watch this live when you were younger,
I
right?
did not.
Just to clarify.
No.
This was so hard because we had to wait about a year
Oh
for
man.
season 3, and we had to end with that
Oh
ending.
my god, with Hank
That
like
was
essentially
torture.
like dead, or it's like possibly dead.
Oh yeah, that was torture. It was such a good cliff ending because it was just like, what the heck? Everything fell apart, literally, and oh, he could be dead. We don't know. Yeah, it was insane, and it was just like Iroh gave himself up. Zuko gave in to his, I guess, long-term desires of being
Yeah.
accepted by
That's
his
such a good
family.
Zuko episode.
Oh yeah, because it makes sense.
Yeah,
It's
oh
like,
yeah.
of course he's not gonna turn around that quickly. You
Right.
know, he's still trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah, because at the end of book 2, Zuko is sort of, I think he's like heavily questioning sort of his life and the Fire Nation and everything, because Iroh has sort of been teaching him, like acting as like the actual father figure he needs, and sort of teaching him more on like the side of like war is like not always the answer to everything, and like impressing your father doesn't have to be the entirety of like of your existence. And I think at Crossroads of Destiny he is like sort of like he's like thinking about it, but he's not fully sold on it. But I think he really did need to like go back to the Fire Nation and experience like things from that side of the war in order to like fully solidify like the ideas that Iroh has been telling him all this time. So
Exactly. And it caused him to be separated from Iroh, which ultimately was probably good for him. Because it led to him to figure stuff out on his own without having the mentor figure. I also thought this was a great episode for Aang as well.
Oh yeah.
Because, especially seeing his morals,
Mm-hmm.
with him choosing, his more earthly attachments, I guess, to power, it's very, in my eyes, it's very respectable. And ultimately he kind of does it just to kind of save him and Katara, and just to try to get out of a situation, not to just abuse power, which I completely respect. And it's a precursor to, I think, what ends up happening within Soza's Comet and the conflict
Oh, for
of,
sure. He's
I
like,
don't
do I
want to
have to
kill
kill him or not?
yeah.
Yeah.
Which I love the energy. I love that it came to the
I
energy
know.
bending thing
I
too.
love that is like the absolute perfect ending for Aang and the Fire Lord. It's just that is such a good way to end it.
Yeah, he was able to win without compromising his morals, which is great. And so, next one, The Day of Black Sun, Part 2.
Ooh, okay.
Day of Black Sun. Oh, this one was a fun one to me. I just love it. The
I love
big
that
action.
those episodes, yeah.
Oh yeah, I love the big action scene episodes, and like it's great to see all the other minor characters come together and like go and fight. And I like watching sometimes those kind of more war tactical episodes.
Yeah, because this is one of the only episodes where it feels like they're fighting like an actual war. Because a lot of the time they're flying around and they're dealing with separate problems, but this is just like a full out like war battle episode.
Yeah, you see like the scale of like what's going on, and them trying to get a taste of victory even though it's a failure. But I think it's also a good lesson that sometimes you need to fail certain battles to eventually win the more important ones. And I think this is kind of like a good lesson episode for that. And also Zuko confronting his father,
Oh, that's so
like
good.
in this one.
Yeah.
So good. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Just standing up to him, redirecting that lightning like back at him. It was just so good on his end. And just and I think just it's I mean, I'll get into it more in the other part, but watching Sokka again in this episode shine as kind of like the leader
he's so
tactical
good
guy
in this episode, yeah.
Oh, he's fantastic. Fantastic.
It's like one of the times where he isn't just there like purely for comic relief, and you see like how important like his actual like intelligence and like tactical skills are. It's so good.
Yeah, and how he does make like a good kind of military-esque leader, you know. When push comes to shove, of course.
Yeah.
And then after that, I got Zuko alone.
Ooh.
Which, truth be told, I did not really care for this episode as a kid. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was because a lot of it was just like, at the time I wasn't really crazy over Zuko until season like 3.
Yeah.
But now watching that episode as an adult, I'm like, damn, that episode is phenomenal.
It's so good.
It's so good. And I'm like mad younger me didn't see this, but
right.
time changes things.
I feel like
apparently.
younger me definitely thought that was a boring episode because there's not a lot happening, but it's so good. It's so good for Zuko character development, and the ending of it is really sad, but I also feel like it's a very realistic ending for it too.
Oh yeah, even though like he comes across the town, there's these kind of thuggish, like, I guess it sounds like mercenary type military guys that are like being jerks in the town. A family takes him in. The son of that family has an interest in him. And then, like, eventually he saves the kid, but he has to fire Ben, and then everyone's pissed at him, mainly because he reveals himself, which is fair. Especially, that family was talking about their son going off and fighting in the war. It's kind of like the last thing they want to see is a firebender in
Right.
their face and hiding in plain sight.
Mhm.
And then, of course, we find out more about his backstory and
Yeah.
kind of what happened
So
to his
good.
mom's disappearance, and
Mhm.
even at an early age, how kind of uh, cruel Azula was.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, and just him growing up and kind of seeing that he's not like a evil kid. He was just kind
Mhm.
of had, I guess, bad influences around him as a child, to get to what
Right.
he was at that time.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's just a great character study episode of Zuko, and you really understand more about his motivations and like why he's doing what he's
Mhm.
doing. And you feel bad for him. He had a
You
tough
do.
life, even though he grew up in royalty with like
Yeah.
you could literally probably get anything he wanted, but yet he was
Right.
still so miserable, you know.
Zuko definitely becomes like more likable the more episodes like that feature him and like the more the series go on. So like in book 1, he's really just like villainous and unlikable entirely up until like probably the finale. And then he gets a lot of development in book 2 and then more like a ton more in book 3, and then by the end like obviously he joins Team Avatar, and so it's like he has such a probably the best character arc I would say out of anyone on this show.
He really does. I mean, in general, he has one of the best character arcs like ever.
Mm-hmm.
He in my eyes, he has the best redemption story arc that I've ever seen from like a TV show.
It's just so
Like,
well written, and it's like so gradual too, and like everything he does like makes sense for like where he is at like at that point in the story, and it's so good.
yeah, it makes sense why it also takes time for him to like change over himself over time, because it's just, it you don't change that quickly overnight. It always takes time, and for him it was a good gradual change over the course of like what, a year in that story time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it worked out well, I think. All right. And then the next episode on here is part 2, where Aang, is chilling on the back of the giant lion
Oh, the
turtle.
lion turtle, yeah.
Yeah, and then where the rest of the guys go find the White Lotus
Mm-hmm.
order,
Mm-hmm.
or Order of the White Lotus, and we get to see all the other prior masters, and then we get the nice, lovely Zuko and Iroh reunion.
Oh, I love that so much.
Oh,
I
it
cry
was
every time I watch
so
that scene. It's
satisfying.
so
I
good.
almost cried. I almost cried.
That's so. That's such.
Oh
I
man.
love that scene.
It's just so emotional, because it's just like, Iroh still loves Zuko. That never
Mm-hmm.
changed. It was more or less he was just upset that he just kind of, in his words, lost his way.
Yeah, and
But this
then
was also,
Zuko is
oh,
afraid that Iroh's like gonna hate him, and like Iroh is just like always had like nothing but love for him, and it's just adorable to see that recognition like finally when they have their reunion.
oh yeah. And then I say this is also a great episode for Aang as well, with him, really trying to figure out, get in touch with his past lives, of him what to do
Mm-hmm.
with this, issue of killing the Fire Lord. And then ultimately comes down to an ancient giant lion turtle who gave him the wisdom, which ended up being um, energy bending,
Right,
essentially.
right.
Which is also like a great precursor, and that lion turtle conveniently brings him to the battle site, which is
Yes.
like the lion turtle knew what was up. Clearly, he sees the future.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that was a good build up into from part 1 and into part 3. Uh, Next one, Boiling Rock, part 2. Finally,
Ooh.
correct one that I was trying to talk about. I still enjoy Boiling Rock, part 1, but I brought it more to Wicked Awesome, because I feel like more of the stakes happen in part 2, to me personally. And
Yeah.
it's
Most of
just,
the good story is in part 2, I think.
oh yeah, it's like filled with such good action and fight scenes, and you know, Sokka and his dad are reunited again. He
Mm-hmm.
finds his girlfriend Suki, and Suki is best girl.
Yeah, she's
Leave
like
it
the
at that.
most
Suki
badass
is best
character on
girl,
this show. I
best
love.
Kyoshi
She's
warrior
so
ever.
good.
She's so great. I mean, yeah, and then of course we get another nice May and Tylee coming back, and I feel like this was actually a great episode for May. I
It
don't think a lot
was.
of people talk about her for this episode, but
This was such a good episode for her.
you really see what this character is truly about. She could give a care in the world about really what the Fire Nation's doing. She just happens to be a citizen living within it. For her, she cares more about loyalty to people than loyalty
Yeah,
to,
for sure.
I guess, country in this case.
Right, right.
For her, ultimately, at the end of the day, she cares about Zuko more than Azula.
Mm-hmm.
Zuko is more important to her, and even though he dumped her mainly to protect her, and of course she's reasonably upset about that,
Mm-hmm.
but, she still fought to protect him because she cares, because that's who she trusts, that's who she cares about the most at this point,
Right.
which I
Yeah,
admire that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that aspect, she's loyal to people than to, greater things, I guess.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
But yeah, also the whole escape plan from the Boiling Rock is just a fun, high-speed, energy, like, chase to get out of
Yes.
that big, giant, hot, steaming lake.
Like volcano, whatever.
Volcano water, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just hot, and hot boiling water.
Yeah.
Boiling rock.
That's why
might
boiling
give you an
rock.
indication, right?
Yeah.
Might give you some indication.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was clearly the better part of that two-part thing, but the conclusion was just satisfying.
Yeah, I have
to
Boiling
me.
Rock 1 and 2 in GOAT tier just because I feel like I have a hard time separating like part 1 and part 2 of like these like multiple part episodes. There's only one case where I really did because I felt the episodes didn't go together quite as well as some of these other ones do, and that's the Winter Solstice part 1 and 2 I think are a little bit more separate stories than the other like several part episodes, but because of that I usually will keep like all parts of like one overarching storyline together in my tier rankings.
I'm impressed by that actually, because I have multiple parts like split up in different sections.
It's because I think I have a hard time like splitting up the part 1 and the part 2 into like their own separate thing because I view them more as like one complete story together. So that's also why I have like a bunch of the Ba Sing Se episodes together, because I view that like totally as like sort of one cohesive story too.
Oh yeah, I agree, and I agree with the Winter Solstice. It really did feel like almost two different episodes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was really just the information from the spirit world in part 1 that was transferred over to part 2 that really connects it to me directly.
Right.
But otherwise, it just feels like kind of two different stories.
Yeah.
But yeah. So next one for me on my go tier, the Ember Island Players. Oh, I love this episode so much! It's such a fun episode.
It's fun.
It's probably my favorite, like, fun filler-like episode, honestly, ever from the show.
It's a good way to recap the season. It's like a really well executed, like fun way to do like a recap on the season.
It's clever because they do it with that, I guess, fictionalized play version of their adventures. It brings like the season 1 episodes back into focus and stuff from season 2. It exaggerates a lot of things. It pokes fun at itself using the play and at the characters, and brings apart interesting things from like theater or whatnot. Like, for example, the actor or actress for Aang is portrayed by a woman. which is common in like theater, especially for like Peter Pan.
Right.
Roles for
like the young boy characters,
are portrayed by women, so it's like that's not it's actually quite common, whether Aang likes that or not. But and it's just it's just a fun way to like kind of do one last final lighthearted episode before things get real.
Yes,
with Sozin's Comet.
For sure.
But yeah. And then next, Sozin's Comet Part 1. Again, I think the endings of their story arcs are better than the beginnings, but this was such a great way to start off the finale, with Zuko finally telling the group after, I guess, having a nice little attack on Aang for him not caring as much about the comet, revealing what the Fire Lord's plan was going to do, and it's just like, oh my god, they are going there in this type of show.
They really are.
Which, yeah, to really drive home, like, this guy sucks and needs to go away.
Yeah.
But, and also, of course, leads to Aang's conflict of, like, oh man, I have to kill this guy, do I? But I don't want to. It feels wrong to do so. So, yeah, that was a good setup to continue through the rest of Sozin's Comet, and I enjoyed it. Also, it was just fun to watch him kind of have a little beach day at secretly hiding at the Fire Lord's, summer house. Hiding in plain sight. I love it.
Right.
And then, yeah, Day of Black Sun, Part 1 is next. It's I preferred Part 2 more, but, like, Part 1 is still a great intro episode for the story arc of the Day of Black Sun.
Yeah. I just love the ending part of the series where they bring together all of these, like, side characters that you thought they were just never going to talk about again, but I absolutely love that everyone is brought back for this, like, final battle.
I love it, because it makes those, side stories feel important, which ultimately they were. Those little bits and little mini seemingly filler episodes become important at the end, with everyone trying to do a smaller invasion on the Fire Nation with the stuff they learned from the library,
Right.
Yeah. And it was, the stakes were high, Anna and Katara had a moment. I like that. That's just me, though. That's just me. But it was stuff that was culminating up for a while. Like, it showed up in subtle forms. It was more obvious, especially on Aang's side. He definitely didn't keep his secret that he was into her. And Katara, I think, it doesn't show as obvious, but through her actions, you kind of have a feeling she cares deeply about Aang. A lot. And especially from, like, The Awakening, you kind of see her reaction to him leaving. It's just kind of like, you care, girl. You care so much. It's more than just a usual caring, in my eyes. And so, him being all like, I don't know if I'm going to come back, just kind of hit home. It's like, oh damn, he decided to shoot a shot before it could potentially be too late, so. So I like that one for that reason.
Yeah.
And then finally, some Book 1 episodes. Siege of the North, Part 2. Good, really great ending to the first book.
Yeah.
We saw the unfortunate demise of Yue becoming the moon, but was a great way to see self-sacrifice because, of our care for the world and making sure things would be in balance. I like seeing that from her. And it was a good conclusion. Aang becoming a big giant spirit monster, pushing away those little Fire Navy ships. It was just it was a great, fun conclusion to the first book.
It was. I really like the finale episodes for each of the books are fantastic.
They know how to end these storylines well, and I'm just like, can more shows do that? And then we got The Storm next.
Oh, okay.
This one, I think a lot of people don't really think of how great this episode is, and it actually impressed me a lot as a kid, but I respect it so much more that I'm older, because this episode is essentially about there's a storm that comes through, um, and it reveals things about Aang and Zuko about their past.
Mm-hmm.
With Aang, it was about the events leading up to him running away from the air nomads. And then for Zuko, it was the events leading up to how he got his scar on his face. It really kind of showed the motivations for both of them and kind of the duality of both. How they're on different sides of the same coin. You know, they both are driven by guilt and regret by actions in the past that they want to try to fix, and they're trying to not let these actions hold them back, and it just continues to be a burden for them.
Right.
And it ties them more closer than one would think. And I love seeing that
Mm-hmm.
like come alive, because I feel like you don't really see that again with like a kid's show, that complexity amongst two characters who are technically supposed to be like, you know, antagonists to each other, but yet the fact that they show that how similar they are is like impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And then couple more for me. The Tales of Ba Sing Se.
Yes.
Oh man,
That's such a good episode.
I really do love all these episodes, especially Iroh's.
Iroh's
made me cry.
So good. It's so sad.
I cried.
No, I cried too, for sure.
Oh my goodness, it's just so emotional, and it's a great way to explore Ba Sing Se as well. Kind of just to see these characters interact with this big giant city, megatropolis.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge. It takes up a good portion of the continent, Ba Sing Se, of the Earth Kingdom. And it's fun for them to kind of have them doing their own little mini adventures while in the midst of geared up of trying to find Appa again and trying to brace for what becomes of the end of the second book.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives some great character insight to Iroh, Toph even. I want to say Toph as well, and what makes her her. And I loved like watching that as well.
I just love the bits of like individual like character development that you get from like so many of like the main cast during that episode. It's so fun.
And then finally we got from my go tier Lake Laogai, because we get to see how corrupted the Dai Li are. And the Dai Li, I think, are probably some of the coolest villains in this whole show, because they come off as a very Orwellian 1984 vibes. Kind of reminds me of like things from like the Cultural Revolution in China and that sort of stuff. It's like that kind of creepy secret agents from like the government, and they're doing kind of messed up things behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to see how bad they are in full force. Like, we see what happens with all the Judies getting brainwashed and like being, you know, programmed through brainwashing, like, I am Judy.
Yeah.
There is no war in Ba Sing Se kind of deal, you know? And then we also see, you know, kind of the early stages of Katara beginning to trust people who've wronged her with, like, Jet.
Yeah.
Jet was, whatever happened between her and Jet in this episode was a precursor to what would happen with Zuko and her.
Oh, yeah.
Even though we know that at the end, well, the creators said that he dies, but it's very implied that he does not make it,
dies there,
which is sad.
It's
and
sad.
Also, Zuko in this episode, where he finally starts to do the right thing after a very great, angry speech from Iroh, where he frees Appa and ditches the blue spirit garb and tries to become anew, and his struggle with trying to, you know, figure out what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
And I loved watching that.
Oh, I love that. That Lake Laogai is one of my favorite episodes. It's so good.
Lake Laogai's great. All right.
The only one that I have differently is I have City of Walls and Secrets also in GOAT tier for me. Just because I am such a big fan of that, like, Bossing Say arc, and I feel like City of Walls and Secrets is, like, a really good lead-in episode to, like, Tales of Bossing Say and then Lake Laogai, because that's when you first sort of are introduced to the Dai Li and the, like, corruption that's there. And I really like that. The only one, I have the Earth King is the only episode sort of in that Bossing Say arc that I have in a lower tier, just because bless the Earth King's heart, because he's like such a pure, like, nice man, but he's just been like manipulated his entire life by the Dai Li. And I think that what is going on in that episode is important, but I think it's a little bit less compelling than City of Walls and Secrets and Lake Laogai is. But
yeah, I agree with arc. City of Walls and Secrets, because that, like, it kind of establishes Bossing Say as a character in of itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, the city is a character with smaller components, in this case, different groups of people, stirring drama and trouble around.
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
And then, do you want to have any other commentary on some of the GOAT tier episodes?
The only other thing I just wanted to mention about, like, the other episodes in general, besides, like, our least favorite ones, is what is your opinion on Jet as a character? Because I know that he's very controversial in terms of people absolutely hating him or, like, liking him a lot. So I just would like to know what you think of him.
For me, I've come to like him.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with Jet, I'm like, okay, you're a jerk, you're manipulating people, but also you're doing the wrong actions to try to make a point to, like, get revenge on the Fire Nation by hurting people who aren't directly involved.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then ultimately he becomes, I think, good. He redeems himself.
Yeah.
So I like him by the end.
I really like that he sort of gets, like, the mini Zuko redemption arc, and back when I had, like, watched the series in high school, I think I forgot about Jet as a character as a whole, and so I wasn't expecting him to show up again in the whole end of the book 2, but I really appreciate how they, like, sort of took the time to, like, give him his own, like, redemption arc. And so he is obviously, like, a pretty bad person in the book 1 when he is about to kill an entire village just to get rid of the Fire Nation there, but I think that what you see of him in, like, the end part of book 2 is really good, and I really like his character story there.
I also kind of want to shout out a few other episodes too. Won't go too in depth, but Blind Bandit, great introduction to Toph.
That's such a good
Puppet Master.
I love that. Yeah, Puppet Master, so good. That's like a horror movie, that episode.
Let's see, Firebending Masters, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
The Beach, I think, is really good too.
That's a good backstory.
The Chase and the Drill.
The Chase.
Fun action episodes.
I would like to say that the really big part of the Chase that makes the entire episode for me is that ending part where it's Azula versus, like, Zuko and Iroh and then like Aang and friends. I love that scene so much.
Oh yeah, that was, like, a great, like, staging and setup, because somehow, even with 6 people on her, she still gets away, and it's like, damn, she is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Deserter, I think, is kind of underrated. Mainly with how it affects Aang and how it views firebending.
Yeah.
The Beach, cool insight into the Fire Nation gang of characters.
Mm-hmm. I have the Blue Spirit pretty high up on my list. I like that episode a lot.
Oh yeah, the Blue Spirit as well.
That's my favorite book 1 episode by far.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Alright. Any other episodes you want to highlight, Kayla?
That's probably it of the ones that I like a lot.
Alright, and then we got, for me, my worst by default, because I actually don't hate these episodes.
Yeah.
But I think they have some more noticeable problems in them.
Yes, for sure.
Let's get the first one out of the way. Great Divide.
Great Divide is such a bad episode.
I don't hate Great Divide.
It's so stupid.
But it is easily the worst in this whole series. It's easily the worst.
It's the most useless, like, plot element ever, and it's just, like, it's like so unimportant to the overall storyline. Like the two, though, you never see those people again. They're in such a petty argument, and it's like it's just not great.
Honestly, the reason why I hated it the most was how annoying they were.
They're
I was
so
like, we get
annoying.
it. You hate each other because of a weird history event that no one remembers the details fully.
Mm-hmm.
Great. You guys bicker like children. Fantastic.
I almost do
I
seem
don't
like
care.
it's fitting that they make up because Aang just like literally tells them a lie and is like, you guys are so stupid. I'm just gonna like lie about a historical event and you're gonna get over it.
And that's also my other issue is Aang lying because it just doesn't
Yeah.
make sense for his character.
It's
at
weird.
all. It just doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the idea of him trying to be a peacekeeper in a way, and also him kind of like taking care of business, like when, you know, the other two idiot tribes bring food into the canyon.
Yeah.
He ultimately uses that to actually help them get out,
Right.
which works great.
Mm-hmm.
Him being resourceful, I like seeing that. But that's pretty much it
Yeah.
of that episode. Bato
Bato of the Water Tribe, yeah.
That's how you say it.
Another
I'm
not
torn
great
in this
one.
one because like there are elements I really like, but then the thing that kills it for me is Aang. Again, his characterization.
He's really
in
killing
this
that episode, yeah.
It's like him lying about the letter. It just doesn't make sense.
It's so
it's
like so immature, but it's like definitely more immature than Aang usually is. And
exactly, which I mean he's supposed to be
he's
like
12
or
years
13.
old, so it's fine, but it's like it's just not like another level of like just like it's like they needed to have some type of like petty conflict, and that was the best they could really give it. But it's still it really kills that episode for me.
And it's a shame because Bato seems like a cool guy, and
yeah.
The whole thing with the nunnery and the perfumes and the Shirshu and June,
Mm-hmm.
especially when June comes in later at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the series. I thought that aspect was cool, and I like the fight between him and Zuko. But like the whole thing with him lying about the letter, and then Sokka's and Katara's kind of overreaction, I feel like, is weird.
It was just they needed to create some type of a conflict there, and it was like it was just not as well executed as a lot of the other episodes were.
Oh yeah, and then we got Avatar Day.
Yeah, Avatar
easily
Day.
The worst episodes of season 2.
It's so bad.
It's just like, I get it. There are gonna be people that don't love the Avatar.
Yeah.
Fantastic, because of XYZ dumb reason.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Chin the Conqueror was pretty bad.
Fucking bad dude, yeah.
And this town is just weird.
It's
it
a
just
weird
doesn't
town.
make sense. We don't come back to this town.
I know, it's bad.
I feel like the only cool episodes of this, parts of this episode, is like Kyoshi learning a little bit more about her backstory.
It's like the only good thing about that is you see more Kyoshi, but that's not enough to really save it.
And then the Rough Riders, them constantly reoccurring again.
Yeah.
You know, showing up throughout the series, even though at some point we don't know what happens to them.
Yeah. The other episode, because I think those are your only 3 worst by default, right?
I have one more, actually.
Oh, I also, okay. What's the other one?
Is it the one you have?
I have the Fortune Teller on mine.
Oh, I actually like that one. I thought it was okay. For me, my other worst one is the swamp, because
the swamp.
Why a swamp? Why a swamp of all locations?
I have the swamp in okay, so it's like not really like that much better than these other episodes, but I don't mind it as much as some other people.
I like the way how it's like, oh, we're connected to the earth, yada
I do like a lot of that, and cool. I like the elements of when they sort of get separated and have like sort of like spiritual like visions or whatever, because that's one sort of Aang first like sees Toph and knows that she's supposed to be his like earthbending teacher. So I do like some of the elements of the swamp, which I don't mind. So I don't mind it as much as some other people.
That's fair. Yeah, it's just like, I just can't take the swamp enders as like intimidating enemies, because they're basically stereotypes of like
they really are
Cajun Bayou people. I
yeah,
feel like, especially with the banjo playing in the background every time they come up on screen. It's funny.
It's like such a stereotype of like whatever, it's like these like country swamp people you would think would be. Yeah.
It's like, it reminds me of Splash Mountain. I'm like, it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
Splash Mountain except for people that bend
Mhm.
water.
Mhm.
Also cool that there is waterbenders in the Earth Kingdom, but
Mhm.
yeah.
So I
But yeah,
have the
what about
fortune
you?
teller down there because I find everyone in that episode insufferable. I have
Oh,
like similar problems with it that I have with Avatar Day. It was like every single person here is just so annoying and like so stupid, and I like could not get over it. It just like made me angry the entire time I was watching the episode.
damn. I did not feel angry. I'm like, it's probably because my little shipper heart is just like, oh my god, this is cute. But yeah, mainly the
The
townspeople did kind of
townspeople
annoy
and then
me.
this like the fortune telling woman, I was just like, there's so I just like I can't. I was like I couldn't deal with that.
I don't blame you for on that end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mainly love in just like stopping this volcano from like, destroying a town.
Yeah.
His resourcefulness for like his isn't Katara's for like creating the clouds
Right,
to
right.
finally get people to listen, which is smart.
Yeah.
And just Katara coming to a realization of like, oh, he is powerful. The feeling, she's starting to catch feelings.
Yeah.
We see it. It's the seeds are slowly being planted. You know, I'm like, I love it.
Yeah.
Subtlety. Let's go. But yeah,
That probably wraps up what we have to say of the tier list for our episode rankings.
yes, I feel content.
Yes, definitely.
All right, and then speaking of Katane, or
Yeah.
should I say Tutara,
Right?
little discussion about that,
Mhm.
because back in the day, this was a
There's a big ship
huge
war is happening.
thing. Ship wars, the origins of the OG TV ship wars of modern times,
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, if you want to go first on this, go ahead,
Okay, so I don't like either of them. Is my stance on it. I feel like I don't like Katara with Aang because I feel like Katara is too much of a sister figure to Aang, and she was almost like a babysitter at points to him in parts of the series, and so I really don't like their relationship on that front. But I also really don't like her with Zuko because her and Zuko I think have a lot of emotion. It's like, well, Zuko doesn't have the emotional trauma from Katara, but Katara definitely has like tons of emotional trauma dealing with the Fire Nation and with Zuko just because he had been hunting them for so long. And so they do get over it at the end of the season, but I still feel like there's a little bit too much there for them to have like a successful relationship. So I really not a fan of either of them. If you had to force me to ship Katara with someone, I'd probably pick Haru because Haru is like the most like just generic like Earth Kingdom boy, and it's just like sure, like that'd probably work out fine.
I mean, he did come back in, was it Day of Black Sun with a nice little goatee
Yeah,
mustache thing going on.
and I've seen people say that they literally gave him like a mustache just to eliminate him as a love interest from Katara.
I mean, Aang eventually gets like a whole beard thing going on when he's an adult, so
Mm-hmm.
if she doesn't like mustaches, she at least likes the sideburns beard thing.
I feel like
going
mustaches
on.
look better when you have like a beard, so maybe he's got he's got that going for him.
Maybe. I mean, for me, I'm not a Zutara shipper, but definitely more of a Katane shipper. I do agree with you and her being sometimes too motherly, but I feel like it's not just limited to Aang. It's definitely more applicable to like her closest friends.
Like Katara
and,
is like
family
definitely
members.
the mom friend. Like that's just
She is
who
the
she
mom
is.
friend for sure, and she's like, I think with Aang it's more obvious his feelings for her.
Yeah.
But with her, it's definitely more subtle, and I like kind of like the more smaller moments with her, kind of like the way she talks about Aang, the way she cares for him. It's definitely different,
Mhm.
not completely, but it is different when compared to other
Right.
like main characters. It's kind of like she definitely cares more. There's something in her that she feels more caring about to him.
Right, right.
I like watching that kind of slow burn and the little points, like with him giving her a betrothal necklace, like
Yeah.
the parallels of him waking up to see her face in
Mhm.
like season 1 and season 2,
Right, right.
I like watching those moments, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It just, and I know we haven't really talked about the comics too much, but like the comics, they definitely go into more about how just on like a good chunk of the moral stuff they just align with. They're just like,
Yeah, I do. I do definitely see that.
Yeah. Like going into like it makes sense why they would be like a good married couple. It just like it makes sense.
Right.
Because I feel like Aang brings out more of like the good side of her. Zuko, I feel like most of her interactions with him in the season, it brings out more of her negative side.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Mainly with like the Southern Raiders, but like the negative side ultimately comes around and like she grows from that.
Right,
so
right.
I ship Zuko and Katara as friends.
Yeah. I don't even know if I really ship like Zuko and Mei either that much. It's like that's fine. Like I'm not upset about it, but I don't know if that's like the best pairing of people either.
That's fair. I mean, I just find it funny because they're both like moody and hashtag emo.
Yeah, they're just
so
like
emo.
It's a
match made
with
in
the
emo heaven.
kids together. Yeah.
But I mean, they do leave the little hint when she's a kid, especially when
Mm-hmm.
she totally has a crush on Zuko. It's just funny.
That was cute.
It's
Yeah,
cute.
I did like that.
It's like it gives her, like she cares.
I think it's
She has
probably
a
just
heart.
because we don't see a lot out of Mei in general.
That's true.
I did some of it is because she is so like just portrayed as an emo girl and like emotionless or whatever, but I do whatever she does get in the series, I think is you can definitely tell she cares like about Zuko deeply. So
Oh yeah, it's probably like the one thing she cares about the most, besides probably Ty Lee in a way.
yeah, exactly.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Do we want to get into the movie?
You want to get into the movie that doesn't exist?
Oh yeah,
or
the non-existent movie.
The non-existing movie.
Yeah.
And how this almost crushed me.
It was. I feel like as a kid, because I did see it when it came out, but it was at the time where I wasn't as into the series, so I didn't mind it as much. And then when I rewatched it back later, I'm like, this is the most horrendous thing I've ever seen.
It's just embarrassing.
It really is.
It's sad. It really is
It's
sad.
so sad.
Because, like,
It's oh my god. So number
It's just,
one,
like-
it's this like even if you take book one, there's too much there to try to condense it into a movie.
It is.
You just
that
can't.
was my first thought too.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense why you would just make a movie out of 20 episodes.
They had to cherry pick, I think, like 5 episodes and only include them in the movie. Because if you think about it, the only ones they really showcased were like the first 2-3 episodes, which is obvious. You need that for the introduction. And then they had the Blue Spirit, and they have Imprisoned in there, but they make it like way worse than the actual series. And then it's the Northern Water Tribe like finale stuff. And so that's only like 7-ish episodes of the whole 20 episode series that you're even getting from the movie. And they like actively make every single one of those episodes worse than what they are in this TV show.
It's like, oh my god, it's just
like
they say the character's
is the
wrong.
most sad thing ever.
Oh my gosh. M. Night, why did you have to disappoint me so much?
The worst.
And the CGI is terrible.
And maybe the worst scene in that
not
movie
good.
is when they're in that prison and it takes like 5 people to move one rock and the rock is moving in slow motion.
It's so bad. It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't
like
make
clearly
sense.
they didn't direct them well to like how the choreographed is.
And it's even worse because in the actual series they're imprisoned like on a metal ship in the middle of the ocean because they're earthbenders. But in the movie they're just straight up like in the forest somewhere. Like there's earth everywhere. Like why aren't they just like leaving?
Like did they just shove a sheet of metal underneath it
yeah,
so they
it's
can't
like
do
we
anything?
needed
what?
Katara to come tell the people that there's earth all around you. You can just get up and leave. Like they didn't know that before.
So did they give up already? Like how did they break their spirit?
Right.
From those firebenders deriving fire from a fire pit.
No. It's
like how did they take over the world?
Like,
just deriving fire from a fire pit. Like what?
I know because they make it in the movie
they
make it in the movie that it's apparently a hard skill to just manifest fire out of nowhere, which is not a thing in the series at all. So they
dumb.
every time the firebenders firemen, they have to have a fire near them, and then instead of Iroh having his lightning powers, they make it he can manifest fire out of nowhere. And I'm just like, why did we have to make that like a thing? Like, that was unnecessary, and it makes bending just look way less impressive.
It also just doesn't make sense as to how they conquered everyone.
It doesn't. They have to bring fire with them everywhere, like, how are they gonna do that? Like,
it's like with the waterbenders. It makes sense why the waterbenders can't conquer anyone.
Right, right.
They don't have. You can't always find water everywhere. Like firebenders, they get the power from the sun. The heat comes from within.
If that's how it's gonna be, and like the earthbenders probably have the biggest advantage to take over everything. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Like, it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Even the airbenders, because air's pretty much everywhere.
The airbenders, yeah, like, why did they just get, like, genocided? The airbenders would be the most powerful at that point.
It's like, oh, jeez. It's like, also, I think what I hate the most about this film is just, like, the lack of characterization. Because what makes the show, for me, is how well developed the characters are.
They make all the characters so boring. They're so boring.
They're shells of themselves.
Sokka is, like a nothing in the entire movie.
He's pathetic in this movie. It's sad.
He's like got no purpose in that movie.
It's like the actor for him was one of the actors of I think it was Jesper, the vampire from Twilight.
Oh.
Like, clearly he was still acting as Jesper, who was so wooden and, like, just not good, man.
It's not good. The casting was bad. What they decided to do with the casting was just really bad.
Dave Patel did try with Zuko,
he did,
but, like, he just gave him such bad lines.
Like, he was okay.
And, like, Aang, I feel like the poor kid got screwed for failure.
Yeah,
reminds me of, like, what happened to the kid actor for Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace. It was just not good.
The only part I liked about this whole movie was, like, the part with the blue spirit, I think, was nice. They pretty much kept that episode pretty similar to what it is. At least the parts involving the blue spirit. So I did like that. That's about the only good thing I have to say about the movie.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it makes sense why someone would want to, say, remake that movie.
Yep.
So, moving on to that. So, live action remake is apparently happening. They announced it, I think, back in, late 2018? Or 2019?
It's been a while. I think it was sometime 2019. I don't know when exactly.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit.
So that's happening, but TBD at this point because,
coronavirus is just, like, putting a halt to life, yeah.
Because animated shows and movies can probably still happen so long as you have the equipment, but, like, live action stuff, if it's not filmed,
right?
Yeah, no, you gotta wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, to what I know of, the creators are involved. Both Brian and Mike are both involved in the creation of the show, which is a good thing.
Yes, it's definitely better to have both of them involved in it.
Yeah, to what I know of, they're still working on pre-production, which, I mean, they can't really film, so might as well make pre-production as great as it can be at this point, you know? I mean, again, the filming's delayed. They haven't announced the cast, and they probably won't till they
can
actually
start filming. Yeah.
Yeah. And then who knows if they're even done casting at this point? I don't know, but a statement from them collectively, I think, is we are thrilled for the opportunity to helm this live action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and we can't wait to realize Aang's world as cinematically as we always imagined it to be, with a culturally appropriate, non-whitewashed cast.
Yes.
Which,
please.
I want to break that down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, like, to me, that implies that they always probably wanted to actually make this live action, which is interesting, I think. And then, yay for not whitewashed cast, because it makes sense with a show that's influenced by cultures from Asia and martial arts from Asia.
Right.
It makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's I think that's, like, also a direct call out to the movie, because that was a big problem with the casting of the movie, was it was whitewashed, and it was really bizarre. And so I appreciate that they're trying to take like active steps to really showcase like the show properly as what it was, because it was so heavily like Asian inspired in the first place.
I guess they also mentioned too about wanting to go more in depth with certain characters, and maybe they could potentially create new minor arcs. So what would you like to see from this remake?
I I think the biggest thing is I don't want the story to be rushed through to the point. Obviously, it's a TV show, so they're gonna have more time to do things with it than they are the movie, and so there's just like I just don't want to see it like rushed through. I want to see at least the amount of like time that we got in like each episode of the TV series to like sort of be represented. I think I just want it to not be like rushed in, because I think that can really ruin the entire vibe of the story.
I agree with that. I hope they do make them a little bit longer. I don't know if they'll do an hour per episode, because this will probably be targeted towards like mainly kids and young teens, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope probably more than maybe closer to 40 minutes, 50.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fine for a show like this, maybe. But we'll see. I guess another thing I hope for is that it doesn't bring up weird lore from Korra.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly from like the origins of the Avatar story. Because I feel like they could potentially include some lore to make it more homogenous.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that would be the best for the show.
Right.
I do hope, though, that we will get an opportunity to go more in depth in, like, maybe characters like, not just Zuko, but, like, maybe Iroh, maybe, like, Toph a little bit more, maybe, like, Suki even.
Yeah.
Like, certain character arcs like that. You know what would be cool? I thought about?
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be cool to have, like, a Zuko, Suki, and, like, Toph adventure.
Ooh.
I feel like that could get interesting.
That would be fun, yeah.
Especially with, like, Suki.
Mm-hmm.
Because she definitely would feel a type of way
I would love
after...
that, because, you know, at the end of, like, book 3, how it's, like, everyone went on, like, a life-changing field trip with Zuko or whatever, to just get, like, Suki and Toph also in one would be I would love that.
I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do think if they went more into like character backstories and sort of lore, I would love that in the series too.
Yeah, I think they also said that they'll keep it within like the story arc of the original series.
Yeah.
So we probably won't get like Zuko's mom and her
right.
what happens to her.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe they could expand upon some other smaller details from the original series.
Yeah.
Hopefully, assuming everything goes well, they get to film it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At some point.
Yep.
But yeah. So any final thoughts? I think we've talked a lot about the series.
We really have talked about everything that we can about the series. I don't know. This show is amazing. Easily the best like children's show, if not like the best show that I've ever watched. So it's just so good. I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't. I don't know why you're listening to this episode if you haven't watched it though. So
yeah, honestly, it's on Netflix now.
It is. It is
Go
so easily accessible now. Like there's no reason you shouldn't watch it. It is amazing.
Yeah. Like, sorry if you haven't watched it and we spoiled the whole thing for you, but you know what?
Yeah,
it's been out for 15 years.
Don't listen to the
episode.
Watch it. Maybe don't listen to this episode if
maybe
you haven't
not.
seen the series.
Sorry if we spoiled it for you, but yeah, honestly, this is probably the greatest kids show of all time. Definitely, I think it's up there for greatest Western cartoon.
Oh,
I don't know if it beats
sure.
certain anime shows, but for sure,
Western
like
cartoon. Yeah, it's up there for sure. Yeah,
it is up there for sure. Just go watch it.
Please
it's
watch
a fun
it.
show.
It's so good.
It's fun. It's the 61 episodes is such a worth it journey.
Mm-hmm. It's like we had to stretch the theme of our podcast so much to just even make this episode, but we're just like, we're doing it anyway. We love this show so much, and we just have to.
And like, again, shout out to the amazing animators from South Korea that helped create the show and design it to look as beautiful and as awesome as it is, you know?
For sure.
Yeah.
So with that, that's the end of our Avatar: The Last Airbender episode. We will see you next time. Bye!
Bye!